Welcome to the Dad Show Podcast, a show all about impacting, empowering, inspiring, and uplifting information to become a better dad, husband, man, and mentor. And now, your host, Ryan Ladd.
Welcome to the Dad Show Podcast. How y'all doing? Today is part 2.
One day, there's this coffee shop in Cookeville called Poets. And I went there, and it was early in the morning. I used to go there and work because I didn't have an office, and I would just go out and I would stop there in the morning, and I would kind of gather myself and where I was going to go for the day. And it was probably 7, 8 in the morning, and I saw a line of those cars, the down and dirty cleaning cars. And so I'm like, well, clearly that's their office, right? So I walk in there, and there's this young lady. Her name's Jennifer. I met her, and I basically pitched her on a website. I had no idea how to build a website, but I'm thinking, I can find a vendor that will, or how hard really can building a website be? And she bought it, $900. That was the first website I ever sold. It's like $900. I had no idea. So being the, I guess, millennial, I don't know exactly what I am, but that I am, I went on YouTube, like how to build a website.
Oh yeah.
And I found this video, how to build a website, step by step, no steps skipped. And I literally just started. And I would watch 15, 20 seconds, and I would stop, and I would do exactly what it said to do. It was by a YouTube channel by name. The guy goes by the name of Tyler. I don't know that that's his real name, but if you type in Tyler and WordPress and website, you'll find it. And I just watched religiously his videos. And to this day, that client is still with me.
Wow.
And to this day, it's one of my highest trafficked websites. It's also one of my worst, but for some reason, it took off and it really enhanced her business and really got her a lot of business. And from there got us a lot more clients. And so that was kind of the start of like web development. Since then, it's become a whole career of mine. But yeah, that was really where it started. And so I would go door to door and just kind of rinse, wash, and repeat. I would go into these shopping centers. I would look at businesses. I would Google, for instance, if I went into a shopping center and there was a nail salon or something like that, nail salons, Cookeville, if they didn't pop up, I would just go in and I'd be like, hey, I was here. I searched for nail salons. You didn't pop up. How much would you pay me to get you to pop up?
Yeah.
Right? And so we started building sort of a base that way with the web clients. And then after a year, I called up Rami, and I'd landed a couple media buying contracts. And I'm like, hey man, I need help. Like, we're growing. During that time, I'd hired an assistant. We got pretty busy. Hired a girl from Rockwood, and she was working for me. And we grew, and I called up Rami one day, and he met with me, and I kind of showed him the contracts that I just landed, and he was like, I'm all in. So actually, Kaylee and I went to his house in Mount Juliet and met with him and his wife, and he was like, I'm all in. And so from there, K2 really began. That was the end of 2015. It took, or right at the beginning of 2016. And so it really took off. Now, getting back to your original question, how did we end up back here? That started sort of a very intense ride, if you will.
Were you married at this time?
I was married. So I'm married at this point.
You had Kimber.
We'd had Kimber.
Yep.
Kaylee was still, working her job, but we were really finding success for the first time. It was shortly after that, that Kaylee actually ended up not working anymore. I don't recall exactly when, but I believe it was around the time that Kimber was ready to like get into daycare, and Kaylee really didn't want to go back to work. And again, we were still at the time, we had purchased a house. This was back obviously before the market got crazy. And I'll never forget, we actually were paying less for our mortgage than we were paying for rent. It was like a brand new house out in Sparta, which is right next to Cookeville.
Yeah.
And so we were living there and things were good. The business was growing like crazy for the first time. It's like, this is stable. Like, this is no longer a concept. Like, we're full on doing this. I brought my business partner back. We had an assistant. We had an office. We actually had purchased a company vehicle that we were using for work because we were driving, nonstop. We were on the road. And so it came time for Kaylee to go back to work. And it was like, hey, financially right now, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. And she didn't. So she stayed at home. But over the next 2 years, the company just absolutely exploded. There were big time contracts going, businesses and dealerships out in in the Nashville area and what have you. So there is an interesting piece where it really exploded. We stumbled upon this kind of idea, if you will, in automotive, local automotive, there's a program called Co-op. And what it is like, so corporate Ford, for instance, they run this algorithm, they do this math, and they end up deeming every vehicle that's sold is worth so much money in that market to market that product.
I got you.
And so as long as you hit your quota every month that the corporate office gives you, say it's 50 new cars.
Yeah.
Then you're allotted so much money per each one of those vehicles to market that vehicle, or like a reimbursement, or in this case, to market it in the next month, right? You're allotted this money. But in that program, the guidelines for that are like extremely strenuous. I mean, so much so to like print ads and stuff, have to have so much spacing between these elements, and, you have to get everything pre-approved. So like if you're running radio or TV and you cut a commercial, it has to say and be a certain amount of time. It has to say certain things, especially with dealer incentives that month and stuff like that. So you're getting all this information and guideline. You have to have it all pre-approved by corporate. It has to run. Then you have to have it all notarized, submit all your copy and stuff that ran, right? There's just a big process and
a lot of red tape.
Yep. And none of the dealerships were using it. So we were running into dealerships that would have $3, $4, $5, $1 million just sitting in a fund for marketing that they weren't using.
Yeah.
And the reason being is that none of those local dealerships have a marketing person, right? It's usually you go to the general sales manager, the owner, or something like that, and you try to pitch them on buying whatever media it is that you're wanting them to buy. And so we're like, hey, we could become subject matter experts at these guidelines. And then the pitch is just, you go in and be like, hey, you've got $1 million sitting in a pot. We'll use it. We'll become your third party marketing agency, your marketing department, right?
Yep.
And we'll leverage all this money, and we'll just take 15% cut agency commission off the top, right? So if we spend $100,000 that month, it's $15,000 goes to the business. Easy peasy, right? And then we just started squashing. So we learned the Kia Co-op guidelines like the back of my hand at the time. I mean, I could packet this thick and I knew everything about it. Ford, Dodge, different, brands like that. And so that's really when it exploded.
Yeah.
That was 2016 running through 17 and into 18. So much so we went from my business partner and my assistant to, at a time, we were 17 full-time employees.
Wow.
Out of an office in Cookeville.
What was that time span of going from just the three of you to?
Yeah, it was like a year.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a ton of growth.
Oh yeah.
For essentially
really
at the time, a kid.
Yeah.
Who knew nothing about business, who was extremely confident, overly confident at times. And again, obviously hindsight 2020, but rightfully so in the moment. Cause I mean, you stumbled upon, a really great idea in a very niche area and just grinded. Right.
And I would imagine you walking into these dealerships, they're kind of dumbfounded because you know more information on this program 100%. Than what they do.
Yeah. The pitch was so easy.
Yeah.
And they were tickled to death because at the end of the day too, we'd be like, we're going to spend this money, what have you, get it all approved. If for some reason you don't get reimbursed, like we fail on something, right, then we'll just assume the cost. But outside of this, it's free money.
Yeah.
This is literally free advertising. You're already getting this money, and it was on a roller most of the time. So like you'd get it for 12 months, and then on the 13th month, that first month, if you didn't spend, it would fall off. And so, but you're constantly accumulating.
I got you.
The only thing is like, we're going to help you hit that quota every month. As long as you're hitting that quota every month, we knew
the money
we were getting more money in the pot.
Yeah.
So like it behooved of us to obviously grind to make sure that they're hitting their targets. And so again, it really took off.
So as y'all can see, the reason that we have latched on to Matt and Kaylee for a lot of our marketing for the Kendi Ladd Foundation and stuff like that, because as y'all can tell already, he's not basic minded. He doesn't just, do the minimum to get stuff done. Obviously, as you're listening, what steps that you've taken to go ahead and grow this business and not, bow down to like the universe and be like, okay, I'm just going to, you tell me no, I'm going to accept that. No,
no was not on the radar. Like it was just, and I keep saying this, referencing the grind, but I mean it was, I mean, I slept at the office for weeks at a time. I mean, I worked until I physically couldn't work anymore. You know?
So being the dad show, I got to ask this question.
Yeah, this is where we're about to get into the meat and potatoes of all of it.
So how did that carry over into your marriage and to being a dad and, you know, that aspect of, you've got Kimber's what, 1 at this time?
She's like, yeah, she's 1. She's the first year of having Kimber was when the majority of the success really took place. And, so to kind of go back a little bit more during this time, you know, I say confident, really what it turned out to be was that's just absolutely the most cocky person that you could ever imagine. And I just let pride just absolutely eat me up. And I say, like, again, rightfully so, but it's just young, ignorant with success. And at the time we were making a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, the company was making a lot of money. I was taking home a lot of money. I was rubbing shoulders and elbows with people that made a lot of money. Right. And it was just, hey, I never thought I'd be. So this was 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I'm flunking out of college and not wanting to go to college and having no idea what I wanted to do to this time. There is a part in this story, though, to go back at when I did flunk out of college early on, or lost scholarships and funding. I didn't really flunk out, but I had the decision to make of like how I was going to pay for it. My parents, if I recall correctly, are pretty much like, at this point it's kind of on you. That I think the agreement was that if you maintain a certain grade and some funding through Hope Scholarship and things like that they would help supplement the rest.
Oh yeah. And
so I ended up going in the National Guard during this time, and so at this point and that was 2010, excuse me, June of 2010. So in 15, I'm already 5 years in, to that. Ended up doing 8 years and getting out in 2018. But so that's going on, at this time too, weekend drills and things like that. Yeah. So a lot going on. But to go back to, so I found success, found cockiness. And during this time, I kind of completely turned away from my faith. Like, I vividly remember a time, and having grown up in the church and kind of had ups and downs and things of that nature, I really struggled with, I guess, I don't want to say organized religion, but just with my faith in general. It was one of those things I felt like I used it. I used faith a lot growing up. It was like when things were good, it was, back off the radar. And the moment things didn't go my way or things were going, poorly, it was always kind of a fallback,
Yeah.
A whole nother conversation and thought around that now. But, and so I remember when I really started putting in the work, it was like, hey, this is what this life requires. Like, there is no God. There is no, that's all just a feel good story. It's like a linchpin essentially that people fall on when they don't have the energy to put in that grind and really just go after what they want.
Yeah.
And so I vividly remember a time where I turned completely away from my faith. In fact, I told Kaylee, like, we'll never go to church.
Wow.
We'll never be religious. Like, God's not real. Like, this is real.
So almost turned atheism in a way.
To an extent. Yeah. Like, I was done with it. Like,
yeah.
And,
because you didn't have time for it, or you were so busy and so caught up with everything that was going on and trying to manage all the branches of the tree that you just kind of lost interest at all? Or
I think it was a combination of all of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I was so enamored with this idea of success that I'd created. And again, if you look at it through that lens, the success that we were having. And it was just like, I for the first time in my life, I'm so proud of myself and my accomplishments where I wasn't prior to that.
Yeah.
And I did all this without the first prayer, without, any of it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was just like, hey, I don't need this. This is the thing. It was almost like when I ridded my life of that teetering with faith, it was like all of a sudden the success started happening. I just became laser focused on this thing. Right. And
now, thank you for watching part 2, and come back tomorrow to watch part 3. Thank you for listening to the Dad Show podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Dad Show podcast. Please like, review, and subscribe.